You know, I've always hated watching game developers who've created such wonderful projects close their doors, and overnight, we watched this happen to Telltale Games. I don't know about you, but this decision was a surprise to me as Telltale had announced numerous new games. They were even mid-development on some. The 4th season of their infamous Walking Dead series was only 1 episode in, with the 2nd one releasing shortly. We had finally got word that Wolf Among Us 2 was happening after 3 years of silence about the project, and so many other IPs that now won't live to see the light of day. I've been meaning to get to this topic for a while, but we can finally take a look at why this happened. Telltale was a massive company, and at one point, everyone was discussing their games, enjoying their stories. But a series of bad decisions, bad press, and a lack of evolution slowly destroyed them. This video is going to look back at Telltale's rise to fame, and why their journey came to an end, why they fell after such a high. This is the failure of Telltale Games. Telltale was formed off the back of LucasArts after a few employees disagreed with the new direction for the company. LucasArts wanted to stray away from the adventure game genre, so Telltale Games, independent from LucasArts, stepped in to fill that gap. The studio wanted to take established intellectual properties with small but dedicated fans and produce a point-and-click adventure game based in that universe. Their initial project was supposed to be an episodic adventure for the IP Sam and Max. However, LucasArts still held the license for the game and refused to negotiate with them. Until the studio could get their hands on the Sam and Max license, Telltale would need to source revenue. They did this by releasing a poker card game in February of 2005. This also allowed them to test their new game engine, the Telltale tool, to see the capabilities of it. To bring in additional revenue, Telltale worked with Ubisoft to create a few CSI games during their startup between 2005 and 2010. Telltale's release strategy for games would be episodic, meaning players would have to wait for the next installment to progress in the story. This was good for a few reasons. Storytelling through episodes allows cliffhangers to make the player more eager to see the end result. Telltale can take the cash from previous episodes to fund the current development too. But this is something the studio would need to test, and to do this, Telltale acquired a license from Jeff Smith to make a game set in the universe of the Bone comics. Telltale wanted to produce 5 episodes for the title, but only ended up releasing 2, which wasn't a great start. But luckily for them, the Sam & Max license became available after LucasArts' rights to it expired. This was big for them. They could finally develop a game they were passionate about. I mean, this was the original goal. Sam & Max Save the World would begin development, and the final episode would release in April of 2007 through their partner, GameTap, an online game service. Amongst Sam & Max fans, the game was a success. Telltale released 6 episodes for the game, proving their strategy worked. It also made it easier to lure in skeptical players, as big fans of the IP would buy all the episodes as and when they released, and anyone skeptical could wait until Telltale did a big play, such as making the first episode free. The gamers would download it, play it, love it, and buy all the remaining episodes. It's genius. Whether they did this for Sam & Max is unlikely, but I do know this is a practice they'd use with future titles such as The Walking Dead. After Sam & Max, Telltale would produce another CSI game for Ubisoft before moving swiftly on to the sequel, Sam & Max Beyond Time and Space. The last episode for the sequel released in April of 2008, with all the episodes getting respectable scores on game rankings and Metacritic. Now, this is where Telltale started to branch out to new IPs, first creating a title based on the Homestar Runner web cartoon called Strong Bad's Cool Game for No, that can't. What is that really what it's called? This game demonstrated Telltale's ability to evolve from just point and click, as the studio implemented small arcade-style minigames into each new episode, which wasn't much in terms of evolution, but certainly something. Overall, the game did pretty well, receiving very similar scores to what the Sam & Max franchise had achieved, and it was only up from here. Wallace and Gromit would be their next IP to tackle, but we're going to gloss over that because oh how the tables turned. Who would have thought that former LucasArts employees would be working alongside LucasArts? I mean, especially after the whole Sam & Max debacle, I was blown away by this. Regardless, Telltale looked past this to create their biggest game yet. Tales of Monkey Island. The first episode released on July 7th, 2009, and the game was a commercial success. This was definitely the biggest project Telltale worked on so far, and it made sense for the title to be successful. Working with a name like LucasArts, who pioneered the adventure game genre, the IP already having a decently sized fanbase, the simple fact that Monkey Island was already a point-and-click adventure game, and with Telltale already creating some quality games, it was destined for success. Tales of Monkey Island received numerous nominations from publications to win awards. IGN nominated the first and third episodes for the Best Adventure Game of the Year, and PC Gamer US straight up awarded it. Telltale was firing on all cylinders right now, and just over a year later, they would one-up Tales of Monkey Island by releasing their next big project. Back to the Future, the game, as part of a licensing deal from Universal Pictures. This was moons bigger than what Tales of Monkey Island was ever going to be. The title is beloved by fans of the Back to the Future series, some even describing it as the fourth movie we never got. Critics awarded the game similar scores to Telltale's previous titles. However, Back to the Future was criticised for having puzzles that were simply too easy. Some even said the characters were bland and that the game didn't quite capture the tone of the films. But despite these outliers, the game was well received, and as I said, smashed Tales of Monkey Island out the park. And here leads to one of Telltale's rougher releases. Jurassic Park, the game. This IP was quite big for the studio to tackle, and despite working with some of the film's creators, it wasn't as successful as previous Telltale games. Jurassic Park gathered mixed reviews from game critics because it felt more like a film rather than a game. Critics noted that the story was enjoyable to watch pan out, but it just wasn't fun to play. It should be noted that this was Telltale's first title where the player could die if they failed to react to situations in-game, definitely upping the stakes and pressure when trying to make decisions. This was a model that Telltale would integrate into future games, further demonstrating their willingness to evolve, to make their games more exciting, more tense, and it worked great for their next couple of titles. In a desperate attempt to save Jurassic Park, to increase the average review, development members of Telltale Games took to Metacritic to write favourable reviews on the game, without disclosing they worked on the title, and this is a shame, though I sort of understand why this happened. I think Telltale knew this title was going to be rough, hence the limited review copies. I mean, companies still do this today. Some members even feared that Jurassic Park would sink the company. It came close.
Then I worked on our Jurassic Park game. The Jurassic Park game is probably the most catastrophic game that Telltale ever made. It almost destroyed the studio, I'm pretty sure.
But they didn't need to force these positive reviews. What they needed to do was swing back with a banger of a game. And that's exactly what they did. During the peak of the Walking Dead franchise, Telltale gifted us with a gem of a game. Telltale's The Walking Dead. With The Walking Dead, the studio struck a formula for success as the game was based around making difficult choices, testing your morals. This is what the game was built on, decision making rather than collecting items or meaningless quicktime events. To craft this game, Telltale did important research, taking inspiration from other developers to create their biggest title yet. This is the formula Telltale would adapt into the majority of their next games. This game series adapts to the choices you make. The story is tailored by how you play. You'd see this in a lot of future Telltale games because it worked. I can't put into words how successful The Walking Dead was. All I can say is that not everyone played Back to the Future or Jurassic Park, but they did play the first season of The Walking Dead. I feel another big reason this game was a major success is because of the dynamic between Lee and Clementine. In a hardened world, you get to watch their bond blossom. Raising the stakes, realizing your actions have direct consequences on the people around you enforces an emotional connection between you and them. And if something was to happen to them, your heart would break. This title hit many gamers hard emotionally. The story Telltale created from start to finish broke many people around the world. If you somehow found yourself here without playing The Walking Dead, I urge you to play it, or even just watch it through. I'm planning to go through the game again at some point on my streams over on twitch.tv/FruscoTTV, so if you'd like to watch it, you can find it linked in the description down below. Critics, whilst upset over the graphical glitches, praised the game Telltale had created for us, leading the title to receive numerous game awards.
The Walking Dead! This is awesome, thank you so much.
For the next couple of years, Telltale would be at the all-time high, producing brilliant games left, right, and centre. The success of The Walking Dead led newly found Telltale fans to try out some of their other games, such as Back to the Future, Jurassic Park, and finally, their newest title. I'd argue that the Wolf Among Us brand was just as big as The Walking Dead was in the Telltale space of games. Even YouTube content shows this. Most YouTubers who played The Walking Dead also gave The Wolf Among Us a shot. The game was set in the Fables comic book universe, acting as a prequel. The first episode released in October 2013 and was a pretty big deal. Telltale continued the comic book cel-shaded art style adopted with The Walking Dead, but slapped a beautiful colour palette on top. This unique art style, mixed with a decent story, quality music, great action sequences, and an incredible atmosphere is why critics praised the game. But like usual, Telltale was let down with technical issues once again. Sadly, as big as The Wolf Among Us appeared, this just didn't translate into sales as much as Season 1 of The Walking Dead did. But Bigby Wolf became a fan favourite, just as Lee and Clementine are, which is why The Wolf Among Us 2 announcement 4 years later was so monumental for Telltale enthusiasts. I myself was excited to jump back into the world as Bigby, but now I fear I may not get the chance to. Just 2 months after The Wolf Among Us journey began, we finally got the most anticipated sequel to any Telltale game ever, at the time. The Walking Dead Season 2. Now gamers will get to experience the harsh world through Clementine, the child you were protecting in the first season. I gotta say, the story for this game was so incredible. Maybe I'm just blinded by nostalgia, but I don't even know what it is about this season specifically. Maybe it's the much darker, brutal world Clementine faces in the game that makes her story so much more compelling. Right from the beginning, you're thrown back into the harsh realities of The Walking Dead, and again, your morals are tested, your feelings are ripped from you as you make some really difficult, heartbreaking decisions. A lot of smart game design went into this season. For instance, the camera was lowered in comparison to the first game to remind the player that Clementine is still just a child. Players had primarily defensive options in terms of combat because you're not Lee anymore. All these nuances showed that Telltale was still thinking of cool and innovative ways to expand their games. The 5 episodes Telltale released were praised by critics and the community, particularly with the atmosphere and tension the game set at times. Honestly, I think Season 2 is my favourite Telltale game to date, which may surprise you. Just the story, the harsh worlds, the tension, the incredible soundtrack, the cast of characters, and the fact this was my first Telltale game I played rather than watched on YouTube makes me feel super nostalgic for it. It's been 6 years since I've experienced this great story and I cannot wait to jump back in. With all the attention, Telltale built up a high profile in the gaming industry, even becoming recognised in Hollywood. Soon after The Walking Dead Season 2 premiered, Telltale picked up some high profile IPs to craft stories with. Batman, Minecraft, Guardians of the Galaxy, Game of Thrones. These are pretty big names for Telltale to be creating games for. But sadly, this is where their downfall began. By now, you may have noticed that the studio had numerous ongoing projects at the same time, which is great in the sense that they get their name out there. They can appeal to more gamers who prefer a different universe. But this started to take its toll as Telltale traded quality for quantity. The studio was still crafting games, but not to the same degree as titles like The Walking Dead or The Wolf Among Us, and this really damaged the company. Sales steadily drifted away as Telltale sadly phased out of relevance. But can we only blame the company shutdown for having too many ongoing projects? That's not the whole story. Telltale doesn't get given these licenses to make games for The Walking Dead or Batman. They need to purchase these. A Batman license would likely cost a pretty penny, which is the probable reason why their games usually underperformed in sales. They were struggling to make profits. With the growth of The Walking Dead, Telltale tried to replicate the success with as many titles as they could, hence making as many games as they could. This involved expanding the company rapidly to bring on new talent to make many more games. When the first Walking Dead hit, the studio had around 100 employees, and after the success of the game, expanded quickly to 3 times its size to try and have more ongoing projects to generate more revenue for the company. It just wasn't working. These factors contributed to the financial strain that would finally end the company. But there's more. It's come out recently that Telltale suffered with toxic management. After the success of The Walking Dead, pressure got to the studio, to the higher-ups. This led employees to be overworked, sometimes working 14 to 18 hours a day. Higher-ups tended to micromanage the game's development, hampering the creative side of the team as they weren't allowed to take risks, to switch from the formula they'd massed success with. Time restraints became stricter and stricter, so the studio would focus less on crafting beautiful stories and expanding their gameplay, and more on building as many games as they could. Taking this Walking Dead formula and applying it to as many IPs as possible just didn't work, and with Telltale's late reaction to Evolve in the next few years, the studio would lose 25% of its workforce in a major studio restructure. Now, 90 developers in the gaming industry were left without jobs as the studio tried to stay afloat until they could right their wrongs. This smaller team would focus less on creating as many titles as they can, and more on crafting excellent stories whilst trying to evolve their overused formula. And we did see steps in the right direction. Telltale's new CEO, Pete Hawley, allegedly cleared out the toxicity, in turn allowing creativity to thrive in the office. Telltale tried to expand their games by creating unscripted combat events, and finally ditched the Telltale tool for a more robust engine. But the financial strain the company was facing, and with their final investor withdrawing, the studio's hand was forced shut. This decision came out of nowhere for a lot of people, especially those who worked for Telltale. You could have assumed it was in the spur of the moment as developers came to work another average day, only to be let go in a few hours. I could not imagine the pain some of these employees felt as they heard the news, losing what seemed to be everything in a 30-minute company-wide meeting. Expiring health insurance and no severance pay, it was a one and done thing as the office emptied out. Whilst Minecraft Story Mode was finished up by a skeleton crew, many of Telltale's other titles were thrown into limbo. The final season of The Walking Dead halted development mid-season, The Wolf Among Us 2 seemed out of reach, Stranger Things was cancelled, and more. But not all was lost. Just under 3 weeks after the studio announced closure, Walking Dead fans would receive the same treatment as Skybound Games stepped in to finish the final season. Clementine's story arc would have an end. Regrettably, this is all the news we got for now. No news on any other Telltale titles, nothing. So, to summarize, licensing IPs is very expensive, which is the probable reason why Telltale wasn't making any profits. The Walking Dead set the company up financially, but relying on the formula the game used, applying it to as many IPs as possible just didn't work. This, mixed with too many projects, the toxic management, the higher-ups' refusal to allow evolution, and the overworked employees led the studio to the path of bankruptcy. I hate to say it, but the original Telltale that brought us beloved games and excellent stories is no more. But whilst their games did disappear for a while, it doesn't mean they're gone for good. The Telltale we know has fallen. However, it's not over for the brand. LCG Entertainment, which is a Californian game publisher, scooped up most of Telltale's assets, their games, IPs, branding, and licenses. In this acquisition, they did lose the rights to The Walking Dead and Stranger Things, but they did retain Batman and another key license.
Can I count on you? Bigby, can I count on you?
Always.
The Wolf Among Us 2 was re-announced at the 2019 Game Awards, and this was big. Finally, another Telltale title that would see the light of day. Fans of The Wolf Among Us like myself get to step into the shoes of Bigby Wolf once again. I truly hope we get to see more Telltale titles rise from the ashes. Maybe not The Walking Dead, as that story arc has concluded. But if we can get more titles that are just as good as it, and The Wolf Among Us, there's a chance we could see a resurgence from Telltale Games. Let's just hope LCG Entertainment doesn't make the fatal mistakes Telltale did. All we can do for now is go back and enjoy the titles Telltale gave us. And creating this video, writing this script, watching all the game trailers again, getting invested in the worlds and characters got me feeling really nostalgic about their games. And that's why I'm planning to go through them again, and I cannot wait. I'll be doing this on my Twitch livestream over on twitch.tv/FroscoTTV. The link is in the description down below. Come hang out, talk to me about this video. We sometimes do that on stream and it's absolutely phenomenal. But if you don't want to do that live and still have some thoughts, any last words for Telltale, or anything you want to discuss about the fall of Telltale Games, please drop that below in the comments and give this video a like while you're at it. Also, if you want to see more videos like this, please subscribe. It really helps us out here. This channel takes a look at the stories behind gaming successes and failures, and we're planning to branch out to more gaming stuff, such as why emulation is so tricky. This video isn't released yet unless the card pops up telling you otherwise. It's just an example of how many video ideas we have written down to produce for you. Thank you so much for watching the video, I really appreciate it. Now, go get all nostalgic and play some Telltale games, because you know I'll be.